どうも、勝手に電力2.0で始めたいと思います。今日1229回目というところで、Enhancing Indonesia's Power System ということで、インドネシアのパワーシステムのところを少しお話しさせてもらおうかなと思っています。この Pathways to Meet the Renewable Target in 2025 and Beyond ということで、2025年度のターゲットと、それ以降というところですね。実際、Indonesia is a fast-growing economy expected to become the fourth largest in the world by 2050. To meet the growing energy demand, the government set ambitious sustainability target and pledged to meet net zero emissions in 2060. 2060年かそれより早くネットゼロにしていくことですね。The power sector will play a major role in the energy transition, but is today the country's longest contributor to emissions from fossil fuel combustion. Over 60% of electricity is supplied by a young fleet of coal-fired power plants whose installed capacity will meet a significant share of demand for years to meet unless steps are taken now mitigate their emissions. Gas currently represents almost 20% of electricity generation. Indonesia has abundant natural resources and a huge potential for renewables, especially hydro, geothermal, and solar PV. The national electricity plan states target 23 per share of renewables in the electricity mix by 2025, up from 14% in 2021. To meet this target, the electricity supply business plan of the state-owned until utility PLN states it meets the target with the new hydrogen thermal and biofuel farming capacities, and with biomass co-farming in coal plants, implementing a plan may be challenging due to delays in the construction of these large generation projects. The plan requires relatively little use of solar PV due to the currently higher cost of this technology in Indonesia. Globally, however, solar PV has become increasingly competitive and its deployment can be quite rapid thanks to short construction times. やっぱり太陽光っていうのは高かったんだけど、実際にどんどん安くなってるし、工期が短いですね。This recently promoted the government to draft a new regulation promoting rooftop solar as a way to meet the 23% target. This leads to the main research question in this study. Could a higher share of solar PV fill the gap and help meet the 2025 renewable target? The study focused on the two main systems of Java Valley and Sumatra, where 80% of the demand is located, and assess assesses their performance across a new number of scenarios in terms of system behavior, cost, and emissions. The central scenario of the study assumes that all uncommitted and allocated capacity from the RPTL, which includes 2.5 gigawatts of new sources of renewable RE, and the biology portion of this designated co-farming capacity will be replaced by utility-scale solar PV. This would require solar PV to reach a capacity of 17.7 gigawatts against 2.8 gigawatts in the loop 2, and an annual share electricity of 10% against 2% in the loop 2 in the combined systems of Java and Sumatra in 2025. Even though such a capacity deployment looks ambitious, the scenario serves as an illustration of the potential role that increasing share of variable renewables could play to help Indonesia reach its objective to attain a decarbonized and diversified electricity mix. The main finding is that the existing assets in Java Valley and Sumatra are capable of accommodating a 10% share of solar electricity by 2025 using flexibility means existing in the system. The current hydro plants are completely capable of delivering the needed flexibility and continue to ensure system stability and adequacy. A relatively high level of PV curtailment in Sumatra, 14% yearly, is however observed at periods of low demand and high solar indeed due to the construction flexibility of power purchase agreement PPAs, as explained further. No investment in additional grids or storage capacity is required. However, this amount of variable generation requires updates to operating practices such as the appropriate forecasting representation of these forecasts in system operation decisions, and the ability to monitor and control the operation of solar PV plants, including the ability to curtail where necessary. On the cost side, the picture is more nuanced. Solar PV brings fuel savings from both fossil fuel 5.5 to 10% and biomass, which comes at a premium, but the current regulations in Indonesia do not allow solar PV to compete in the short term when considering the total system cost. However, the authority have options. Long-term plans for PV deployment would allow a local industry to develop and offer cheaper rates. Removal of subsidies to coal generation and the introduction of carbon pricing would further improve the business case of all renewable sources. Given the focus of the study on 2025, these longer-term initiatives are not studied in detail, but could be the subject of for further study. Another aspect not included in this study is the benefits of enhanced grid and interconnections such as the expected interconnections between Java and Sumatra in 2028, the role that increased interconnection among Indonesia's main islands could play in the long term is addressed in IEA's upcoming energy sector roadmap to net zero emissions in Indonesia. A key barrier to accommodating variable renewable in the Indonesia power system is contractual inflexibility and take-or-pay (TOP) obligations is PPAs between PLN and independent power producers, with guarantees offtake obligations and in fuel supply contracts for gas generator reduce incentives for thermal units to be flexible and affect the overall efficiency of the system. The PPA constraint is significant since the capacity of core IPPs in Java Valley is equal to two-thirds of the peak demand in 2025, with the assumption of the 60% guaranteed offtake each year. This significantly reduces the room in the generation mix for renewables. These contractual constraints are the barrier not only to variable renewables, but also to any new renewable capacity, even dispatchable hydrogen thermal, and lead to higher system costs. Removing these constraints, at least partially, would therefore provide room for renewables, reduce costs, and help reduce emissions. To provide concrete recommendation on the contractual structure and amount of contracts to revise, more contractual data would be required. The study does not look in detail at the role of biomass co-farming. A key contributor is PLN plans to meet the 23% target in 2025. It notes, however, that biomass co-farming is PLN's existing core plants at low blending rates, 10 to 20% as currently considered, as these requires no retrofit of the assets, may exacerbate the coal dominance in the electricity mix. Reliance on the significant share of biomass generation through co-farming in selected plants as specified in the LUPTO would require these plants to run almost flat out, while for every unit of energy from biomass, 9 units from coal are forced into the system. This reduces the system flexibility and increases operating costs through interaction with other contractual inflexibilities such as a gas TOP contract. A more thorough study would be required to assess the role of biomass in Indonesia's electricity mix. The study also looked at the role of electrification of end uses like cooking and road transport, which are part of the government strategy to decarbonize the economy, reduce oil imports, and improve air quality and emissions. Given the oversized thermal capacity, increased electricity demand reduces the curtailment of solar PV mainly in Sumatra, but also leads in Java Valley to an increase in power sector emissions, supporting the need to decarbonizing electricity as the end users are electrified. Despite this, overall emissions are still reduced with the electrification of road transport driven predominantly by efficiency gains in the move from diesel internal combustion engines to electricity for 2 or 3 years. The overall conclusion is that from a new system integration perspective, Indonesia can aim for higher share of of renewables than those listed in the current plans for 2025 and beyond, especially when considering a mix of variable renewables and other dispatchable technologies. However, investment in these renewable capacities faces the risk of low capacity factors due to the very high amount of thermal capacity in the system within flexible contractual structures. A priority for the Indonesian power sector is to review the contractual agreements while respecting investors' rights and ensure that the summer fleet is used as closely as the actual technical capacities as possible. Key recommendation. The power sector should put renewables, in particular solar PV, at the center of planning and studying adapting operating practices to enable more generation from variable renewables. The authorities should take actions to improve the financial competitiveness of solar PV with respect to other technologies in Indonesia. In the short term, constraints such as local content might be reconsidered. The authorities could also take wider action to level the playing field between coal and other technologies by removing the implicit and explicit subsidies to coal. For example, the price cap on coal supply and supporting a shift toward low carbon source with some from the carbon pricing. The power sector should make best use of the current asset in the system and allow or incentives the generation fleet to operate according to its technical capacities. The authorities should prepare new contract structure with embedded flexibility for all new PPAs and fuel supply contracts. In addition, to complement the upcoming coal phase-out program, they should consult with stakeholders in order to design and approach that brings additional flexibility from existing generation. Chapter 1 in the introduction. Meeting Indonesia's target of the 23% share of renewable in the electricity mix by 2025, Indonesia is today the seventh largest economy in the world, the 12th largest energy consumer, and the ninth largest emitter of CO2 for fuel combustions. Its economic growth over the next decade will be spectacular, going from the GDP per capita of around USD 13,000 in 2021, which stands at 70% of the global average, to USD 40,000 by 2060, a level equivalent to today Japan taking into the range of advanced economies and within the top five global economies while total GDP is considered. In 2021, Indonesia announced a commitment to achieve net zero emissions by 2060, or area with support from advanced economies. The measures that could be taken to achieve this target include inducing energy efficiency measures, increasing the share of renewables, reducing the use of fossil fuel, increasing adoption of electronic vehicle and electrification of residential end use. The transformation of the power sector would therefore be critical in achieving this goal. Emitting 224 million tons of CO2 in 2019, the power sector in Indonesia is the country's largest emitter, accounting for 38% of emissions from fuel combustions. Coal is the largest means of power generation, accounting for around 60% of the country's total electricity output. The emissions intensity of Indonesia's power sector is highest among the Southeast Asian countries at 760 tons of CO2 per kilowatt hour in 2019. The policies and regulatory frameworks of the power sector therefore need to be realigned towards the net zero goals in the short term in its National Electricity General Plan. The Directorate General of Electricity under the MEMR set the target to achieve at least a 23% share of renewables in the electricity mix by 2025, up from around 14% in 2021. While Indonesia has substantial renewable energy potential, particularly geothermal, hydro, and solar generation, only a small proportion has been utilized or planned, offering a range of options to decarbonize the power sector. Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world, and there are significant differences among the islands. Java is the most populated island and its system interconnecting the three islands Java, Madura, Bali, and hereafter Java Bali or JVB is by far the largest power system. Together with neighboring island Sumatra's SUM, these two systems represent 80% of Indonesia's electricity demand. Until these two systems are interconnected from 2028 at the earliest, Java and Sumatra are distinct systems with the different features. Java is a densely populated island with a coal-dominated electricity system, while Sumatra is a more rural island with a high potential for solar and hydropower. As interconnections between the islands grew in the future, Sumatra has the potential to play a role as a renewables hub. There, an examination of Java and Sumatra brings to light the many and diverse potential and challenges relating to renewables growth in the Indonesian power sector, while already representing four-fifths of the country's electricity demand. Power system flexibility to support clean energy transition in Indonesia. Also, Indonesia has high potential for hydro and geothermal generation. Solar PV is expected to play a growing role. Currently, solar PV comes at higher cost than other renewable technologies. However, wind and solar PV are expected to account for a growing share of the new addition globally as their cost competitiveness continues to increase. Integrating variable renewable VRE like wind and solar PV in the power system can be challenged due to their unique technological properties. Variability because the output varies over time depending on the availability of primary resources, wind or sun, and uncertainty as the output cannot be perfectly forecasted, especially at longer lead times. Systems such as in South Australia, Denmark, or Ireland have demonstrated that this challenge can be addressed in cost-effective and reliable ways. To help governments deploy efficient measures in the right order of priorities, the IEA has developed a framework to capture the evolving impacts and understand the challenge of integrating VRE into the power system. In particular, solar PV produces electricity according to diffuse solar radiation, which is affected by the season and, of course, daylight, requiring other resources to take over in the evening. Higher reliance on solar PV therefore requires sufficient flexibility in the electricity system to keep supply and demand in balance across all relevant time scales, ranging from seasons to hours and minutes. Power system flexibility refers broadly to all the attributes of a power system that allow the system operator to reliably and cost-effectively balance demand and generation in response to variability and uncertainty. Key components of power system flexibility include technical flexibility, constructural, institutional flexibility, and operational practices. These components must be considered simultaneously in the effort to enhance system flexibility. The building blocks of power system flexibility, technical flexibility, power plants, and flexibility lamp rates, minimum stable level startup time, electricity grids and interconnection, storage, demand response and use, including EVs, digitalization and smart grids, contractual institutional flexibility, power markets, constructural structure, PPS or fuel supply contracts, curtailment conditions, ancillary services, system operational practices, VRE forecasting close to real-time scheduling and dispatch, reliability standards and sizing of operate reserves, coordinating dispatch across balancing areas, report scope and structure. This report focuses on the two largest systems of Java and Sumatra and how they may evolve by 2025 to meet the target of a 23% share of renewable in the electricity mix. In particular, the ability of these two systems to accommodate more variable renewable energy VRE is analyzed. Given the significance of these two systems, the differences between them and the nature of the challenges recommendations can be drawn for Indonesia's power sector over the next decade as it will play a key role in the country's pathway towards carbon neutrality by 2060. This study has three main parts. Chapter 2 provides the context of the existing Indonesia power sector. It gives a general description of today's power system before diving into the challenges relating to system flexibility that must be addressed for the integration of higher share of VRE such as solar PV. Chapter 3 focused on the two largest systems of Java and Sumatra, which together account for 80% of the country's demand for electricity. It represents a technology analysis to assess the capacity, capability, and the challenges that these two systems face in integrated VRE. To meet the renewable targets of 2025, a central scenario looks at the potential solar PV to fill the gap between the current trajectory and the target. Alternative scenarios address the electrification of transport and residential cooking, separated by parallel goals of the Indonesian government and how they can contribute to VRE integration. Another key aspect that is studied is the inflexibility of the current contractual structure for power generation. Chapter 4 builds on the key outcomes from the previous two chapters to identify some measures that would support reaching the short-term sustainability objectives and prepare for more ambitious targets. These measures include enhancements to construction structures, power system planning and operation practices,